Greetings, curious souls. You've found your way to the right place. Real Midnight. Here, every second hides a secret, and every story is more than just a legend. Have you ever felt that something meant to remain at rest chooses instead to follow you? That night, the Balinese sky hung low, heavy with gray clouds veiling the full moon. A small boat drifted across Lake Batur, swaying gently with the ripples. On board sat a foreigner with a camera slung around his neck. His name was Jonathan Miller, a 32-year-old tourist from England, tall, restless, with the face of a man who too often chased things best left unseen. He was accompanied by a local guide, Wayan, who rowed the boat toward a village rarely mentioned in travel brochures. The air was cold, carrying a faint scent of sulfur. In the distance, mist shrouded the slopes of Mount Abang, forming a looming silhouette against the night. Here, the dead are not buried, Wayan whispered, as though afraid something in the mist might overhear. They are simply laid beneath the great tree, Trunyan. That tree keeps the stench of death from spreading. Jonathan smirked. He had read about Trunyan, a village known for its unique funerary rites, where bodies were left exposed under the sacred tree yet never decayed with foul odor. To most tourists, it was macabre exotica, but to Jonathan, it was something that demanded to be documented. The boat bumped against a rotting wooden pier. The ground nearby was damp, littered with wet leaves. Jonathan lifted his camera, filming the narrow, silent path ahead. And there he saw them, rows of human skulls arranged neatly beneath the massive tree. Some were covered in moss, others so clean they looked as if they had been placed there only yesterday. Jonathan was enthralled. He stepped closer, framing the hollow faces of the skulls through his lens. "Don't go too close," Wayan warned. "They don't like it." Jonathan chuckled. "They? You mean the dead? They're just bones." But something within him whispered otherwise. One skull in particular drew his attention, smaller, perhaps belonging to a child. Its empty sockets seemed to stare back from the darkness, hollow yet filled with demand. Jonathan crouched, hand reaching out. Wayan froze, his breath caught. "Stop, you must not touch it." But Jonathan already had. His fingers brushed against the skull's surface, cold, slick with night dew. Slowly, he lifted it. At that moment, the wind ceased. The night fell silent. Even the ripples of the lake seemed to halt. And in that silence, a whisper came from the skull. "Return me, or come with me." Jonathan gave a strained smile, convincing himself it was only his imagination. He glanced at Wayan. Nothing happened. See? Just a skull. But Wayan's face was grim. "You don't understand. That skull is part of a ritual. Taking it is the same as inviting them to follow you home." Jonathan slipped the small skull into his backpack. "Relax, Wayan, I'll bring it back tomorrow." They returned to the boat. The night grew darker. Clouds swallowed the moon completely, turning the lake into the surface of a black mirror. Wayan rowed faster, as though desperate to leave the place behind. Yet all the while, Jonathan felt something heavy inside his pack. The skull, though small, seemed heavier than stone. From within came faint cracking sounds like teeth grinding together. Jonathan swallowed hard, trying to ignore it, but when he glanced down at the lake's reflection, he froze. His own face stared back, yet right beside it appeared another face, that of a child, with hollow sockets fixed directly on him. Startled, Jonathan nearly dropped his camera. He rubbed his eyes and looked again. The child's face was gone. "You okay?" Wyan asked, breathless from rowing so fast. Yeah, I'm fine," Jonathan muttered, though unease knotted in his chest. When they finally reached the inn, Jonathan rushed straight into his room. He tossed the backpack into a corner, but the night brought him no rest. From within, he heard a faint sound, the clattering of teeth. Click, click, click. He turned, body tense. Suddenly, the backpack shifted on its own. Then a whisper rose from inside. "I wasn't finished there." Jonathan froze. Morning came. The sun was bright, birds sang cheerfully, as if the horrors of the night before had been nothing but a dream. Jonathan tried to laugh at his own fear. He opened his backpack to make sure the skull was still there. It was lying inside, looking perfectly ordinary. Nothing strange. "See? Just a skull," he muttered, snapping a few close-up photos. But when he uploaded the images to his laptop, his heart pounded. On the screen, the skull looked different. Its eye sockets glowed faintly red, and behind it stood the shadow of a child, staring straight into the camera. Jonathan froze, his face draining of color. He glanced at the corner of the room. Empty. No one there. He tried to calm himself with a cup of coffee, but as he sipped, the taste was wrong, flat, metallic. He looked down, and thick blood dripped from his lips onto the table. Choking in panic, he dropped the cup. Yet when he looked again, it was only ordinary coffee. "Fuck," he whispered, his hands trembling. That day he went to see Wyan, who refused to say much. "Return the skull now, before it's too late." Jonathan shook his head. "Not yet. I need to document this, don't you see? This is real proof of something beyond life. It's history." Wyan's gaze hardened. "You think you've found history? No, foreigner, you've opened a door, and once that door is opened, it can never be closed again." Night fell once more. Jonathan sat in his room, camera on, recording himself. He wanted to make a vlog to prove it to the world. But when he watched the playback, his blood ran cold. On the video, he sat motionless, cradling the skull in his lap, his eyes vacant. And behind him stood dozens of eyeless faces, staring directly into the lens. Jonathan replayed the video again and again. Each time he watched, the number of faces behind him grew, from 3 to 5, from 5 to 7. The longer he stared, the more crowded it became. All of those faces were eyeless, just hollow sockets staring straight at him. He shut the laptop, his breathing ragged. "It's just a glitch, camera error." He tried to reassure himself, but when he stood up, his shadow on the wall lagged half a second behind his movement, and in that gap, crouched low, was the figure of a child holding a skull, smiling without a mouth. A chill swept through the room. Jonathan quickly zipped the backpack shut, locked it, and rushed outside to find fresh air. Along the village road, people looked at him strangely. Mothers pulled their children aside as though something clung to Jonathan's body. He heard whispers, one word repeated again and again, Pamali. Finally, he found Wyan at a small coffee stall. "I need to know what's really happening," Jonathan demanded. Wyan's face tightened. "You brought back a spirit that doesn't want to leave. That skull doesn't belong to just anyone. It was a victim." "Victim of what?" Jonathan asked. Wyan lowered his head, whispering almost inaudibly. "A sacrificial offering." Jonathan gave a nervous laugh. "Come on, that's just folklore." But Wyan's eyes locked onto his. "Folklore? Do you think this village exists only for tourist stories? The skull you're holding, belonged to a child offered up decades ago. He was left beneath the taru tree, not just to die, but to preserve balance. Balance. The word echoed in Jonathan's mind. That night he tried to sleep, but at 2 a.m. he woke to the sound of a chair scraping across the floor. In the corner, his backpack was open. The small skull now sat on the table facing him. Its eye sockets were pitch black. From within, a child's voice whispered softly, playfully, "Let's play, Jonathan." Jonathan jolted upright and turned on the light. The room was empty. The skull still sat on the table, but now it was tilted, as if someone had just placed it there. With trembling hands, he grabbed it and shoved it back into the backpack, tying the zipper shut with a piece of string. Enough. Tomorrow I'll return it. But sleep never came. Each time he closed his eyes, he heard the faint patter of small footsteps inside the room, soft giggles echoing from the ceiling. Now and then, he felt the edge of his blanket being tugged. At exactly 3:15, Jonathan heard something clearer, a voice calling his name. "Jonathan! Jonathan!" He turned toward the window. Behind the glass stood the figure of a child. Its skin was pale, its eyes hollow, its mouth gaping and filled with blood. In its hand, it held the very same skull. Jonathan screamed and fell off the bed. When he looked again, the window was empty, but his backpack was wide open, the zipper broken. The skull was gone. Panicking, he rushed out of the room, searching for Wyan. He found the guide's house dark and quiet. He banged on the door frantically. At last, Wyan appeared, his face weary. "What have you done this time?" "The skull. It moved on its own, I swear," Jonathan cried, nearly breaking down. Wyan exhaled heavily. "Tomorrow morning we'll return to Trunyan, if you're still alive by then." Jonathan froze, his whole body trembling. "What do you mean, if I'm still alive?" Wyan looked at him with pity. "Because the voice you heard tonight, that wasn't a child's voice, it was the caller." The night dragged on endlessly. Jonathan sat in the corner of Wyan's house, waiting for sunrise, but every second felt like an hour, and with each passing moment, the sound of click, click, like teeth grinding, crept closer and closer. Morning arrived, shrouded in thick mist. Jonathan and Wyan set out across the lake, carrying the skull inside a wooden box Wyan had prepared especially for it. "Don't open it, don't look at it, don't listen," Wyan warned. "If you break those rules, you won't come back." Their boat moved slowly through the fog. Lake Batur felt unnervingly quiet. No bird song, no ripple of water. As they neared Trunyan, Jonathan noticed something wrong. The taru tree that had looked majestic the night before now seemed wilted, its branches blackened as if burned. Beneath it, the rows of skulls were no longer neat. Some lay toppled on the ground, as if they had fallen from their places. Jonathan swallowed hard. This doesn't look right." Wyan frowned. "It's because you took one, you disturbed the balance." They stepped ashore. The air around the tree was thick, carrying a faint, foul scent. Jonathan's head felt heavy, as if thousands of eyes watched him from within the mist. Carefully, Wyan opened the wooden box. At first, the skull looked ordinary, until Jonathan leaned closer. Thin hairs grew from its rear, and a tiny crack in its jaw seemed to move, as if whispering. "Put it back slowly," Wyan instructed. Jonathan knelt and placed the skull among the others. But the moment his hand touched the earth, something writhed. Thin black fingers clawed up from beneath the soil and latched onto his arm. Jonathan screamed and tried to pull away. Then the child's voice rang out from every direction. "Too late, you are mine now." The ground beneath him split. From the cracks, other skull faces emerged, mouths open in silent screams. Wyan panicked, tugging at Jonathan. "Let go, don't fight, don't shout." But it was too late. Jonathan was already half dragged under. From the black void below, a last whisper rose, cold and straight into the chest. "You will become one of us." Jonathan was yanked free by Wyan, his body smeared in foul-smelling black mud. His breath came in gasps, eyes wild as he stared at the ground that had nearly swallowed him whole. "Why? Why me?" he shouted. Wyan gripped his shoulders hard. "Because you touched it. The skull bound itself to you, John. From the moment you took it, the spirit trapped inside has been following your blood." Jonathan shivered, his gaze drifting toward the rows of skulls beneath the taru menyan tree. They all seemed lifeless, yet every so often, he thought he saw one or two shift ever so slightly, as if changing their position. A sudden gust of wind swept through, making the tree sway. Its leaves trembled, producing a low sound like a chorus of human groans. From the lake, the mist thickened, rolling in heavy waves. Wyan dropped to his knees, muttering chants under his breath. But at the same time, Jonathan heard something else. A voice inside his head. The same child's voice. "Don't listen to him, you belong with me now." Jonathan clutched his ears, shaking his head. But the voice only grew louder, more real. Suddenly, his body convulsed. Blood seeped from his palms, tracing a circle on the ground. The circle shimmered faintly, and at once the earth within it began to quake. Wyan shouted in terror, "Stop, don't let him draw the circle, that's a doorway." But it was already too late. From the trembling soil, thin, peeling hands clawed their way up, dragging out the shape of a small body. A child emerged, skin pale, eye sockets hollow, teeth dripping red. The child smiled at Jonathan. "You freed me." The child stood upright, though its frail frame looked like it could collapse at any moment. Thin strands of hair draped across its face, and every step it took left behind wet prints on the dry ground. Jonathan staggered backward, his face pale. What are you?" The child turned, grinning with jagged, broken teeth. "Your friend." Wyan grabbed Jonathan, yanking him toward the boat. But before they could reach it, the mist over the lake thickened, forming a solid wall. Children's laughter echoed from every direction, blending with the wails of an old woman. "There's no way out," Wyan shouted. He stabbed a small kriss into the ground and began reciting prayers loudly. Yet his voice was drowned out by a piercing scream from the direction of the tree. The taru menyan split down its trunk. From the crack oozed a thick black liquid dripping like blood. The stench of decay spread across the area. Jonathan clutched his head, nearly mad with terror. From within the fog, he saw figures without eyes staggering forward, each carrying clay jars that clinked softly. The jars were cracked, and from inside came the sound of weeping. The child stood before Jonathan, locking eyes with him. "You can join me, or you can rot with them." At once, a piercing chill spread through Jonathan's chest. From his skin emerged faint black lines creeping like roots across his body. He collapsed, his frame shaking violently. Wyan rushed to help, but an unseen force flung him aside, slamming him into the ground. The child glared at him with hatred. "He doesn't belong, only you do." Jonathan screamed at the top of his lungs. The sound reverberated through the mist, freezing everything for a heartbeat. But only for a heartbeat. From within the fog, another figure emerged. Larger, older, and far more terrifying. A being with a cracked skull for a face, draped in ragged white cloth. And from its mouth came a whisper. "The child is only the beginning." The figure stepped out of the mist, each stride making the ground tremble. Its cracked skull face bore burn-like scars, as if it had once been punished but never destroyed. Jonathan collapsed onto the ground, trembling. "No, this isn't real." Wayan stood with what little strength remained, his face pale as death. That is the old guardian spirit. He was the one who kept the curse sealed within the tree. And now, you've awakened him. The figure advanced, bones creaking with every movement, its hollow gaze fixed on Jonathan. You touched what was not yours. You carry the debt now. Jonathan shook his head, tears falling. I didn't mean to, I didn't know. The figure went silent, then pointed at Jonathan's chest. From there, a black light seeped out, forming an ancient symbol. The mark pulsed, alive, breathing. The small child laughed gleefully, skipping around Jonathan. See? You're chosen. You're ours. Wayan shouted desperately. Fight it! Don't let them plant that mark inside you. He drew his crease and tried to drive it into the black symbol, but was thrown back instantly. Blood sprayed from his mouth as he hit the ground. The cracked skull spirit lowered its gaze upon Jonathan. Every trespass has a price. You are the price. Jonathan screamed as his body arched, the symbol searing his flesh from within. Around him, the wails of hundreds of trapped souls filled the air, but suddenly a strong wind swept through. From afar, the faint sound of gamelan music drifted, as if rising from beneath the lake itself. The eerie melody froze every spirit in place. Jonathan opened his eyes, tears mingling with blood. He realized something else had awakened beneath the waters, and it might be their only hope, or a far greater catastrophe. The sound of the gamelan grew clearer. Gongs, drums, and flutes blended into a melody that crawled straight into Jonathan's chest. The tones felt soothing, yet they also froze his body in place. The child stopped laughing, his face tense. He turned toward the lake, then hid behind the cracked skull figure. Wayan whispered, "That is the sound of the spirit gamelan pavilion. Legend says it's played by ancestral spirits to keep the curse from spreading." The cracked skull figure shifted uneasily, its steps faltering. "No, not now. Not yet." Jonathan tried to rise, though his body was covered in black markings. The gamelan's melody cleared his mind, if only slightly. He clutched his chest, feeling the symbol's pulse slowing down. But then the ground at the lake's edge split wide open. From within emerged a glowing green light. Along with it came a procession of tall, gaunt shadows wearing wooden masks frozen in screams. They moved in unison, dancing to the rhythm of the gamelan. Wayan's eyes widened. Those are the sacred dancer spirits. They are summoned to restore balance, but if disturbed, they could destroy everything. Jonathan stared at the shadowy figures. Every movement of their dance sent waves of energy through the mist, parting it. Yet with each heavy stomp, the symbol on his chest burned hotter. The child screamed, "Don't listen to them, they'll tear you apart, you're mine!" Jonathan shrieked, blood trickling from his ears. Two forces pulled at his soul, the holy gamelan of the ancestors and the cursed whispers of the child. Only one could be followed, and his choice would decide whether he remained human or became one of them. The gamelan suddenly stopped. A suffocating silence replaced the sound that had ruled the forest and the lake. The shadow dancers froze mid-motion, then slowly turned their faces toward Jonathan. The eyes of their masks glowed green. One by one, they began to advance, circling him. Wayan shouted, "Don't let them touch you. The moment they do, your soul will be dragged to the bottom of the lake and you will never return." Jonathan staggered back, his breathing ragged. "What do they want from me?" The cracked skull figure laughed, the sound echoing like clashing metal. "They want balance, and balance requires sacrifice." The child clutched Jonathan's hand, its coldness piercing. "Don't let them take you. Fight them. You're stronger with me." Jonathan looked at Wayan, desperation etched on his face. "Tell me what to do." Wayan gritted his teeth. "You must choose. If you go with the dancers, your soul will be lost, but the curse will end. If you follow the child, you will live, but you'll carry the curse forever. Jonathan froze. Tears streamed down his face, his body trembling. Part of him wanted to live, yet another part knew he was already too far gone. The shadow dancers drew closer. From the mouths of their masks, green smoke poured out, wrapping around Jonathan. His body felt weightless, almost lifted from the ground. The child screamed in fury, its face twisting hideously. Black eyes stretched wide, mouth tearing open to its ears. "He's mine! You can't take him!" The forest exploded with energy. The Trunyan tree shook violently, its leaves falling like a storm of blood. The lake churned, massive waves rising without wind. In the chaos, Jonathan realized there was no right choice. Every path led only to ruin. Jonathan closed his eyes, feeling two forces tearing at him: the sacred sound of the gamelan and the cursed whispers of the child. Suddenly, he opened his eyes, determination carved across his face. "If balance requires sacrifice, then let it be me." He grabbed the child's hand tightly. The child's body jolted, its black eyes widening in shock. "No, you can't. You're supposed to be mine." Jonathan stared coldly. "Then we both go down together." He pressed the black symbol on his chest against the child's hand. Instantly, black and white light exploded at once. A horrific scream rang out from every direction, from the shadow dancers, from the cracked skull figure, and from the child itself. Wyan screamed, shielding his face from the blinding light. Jonathan's body burned from within, the black symbol slowly shattering. The child shrieked in rage, its body cracking like shattered glass. "No, I waited centuries. You can't..." Boom. A burst of light engulfed the entire Trunyan village. The Trunyan tree erupted in flames, its leaves bursting into ash. The mist over the lake split apart, revealing a night sky glittering with stars. As the light faded, Jonathan stood, his body scorched and broken, but the child was gone. The shadow dancers vanished, the cracked skull figure crumbled to ash. But something else had happened. In Jonathan's palm, a small fragment of a white skull remained, pulsing like a living heart. Wyan stared in horror. "Dear God, John, you didn't destroy the curse, you only moved it into yourself." Jonathan staggered, his body on the verge of collapse. In his hand, the fragment of the skull pulsed steadily. Each throb made his blood feel as if it were boiling, his skin burning from the inside out. Wyan approached cautiously. "Throw it away now, that doesn't belong to you." Jonathan clutched the fragment tighter, his face pale. I can't. It's inside me now. I feel it, every heartbeat. It's no longer mine." From the lake, mist began to creep back over the surface. Though the explosion had scattered it before, the fog returned thicker, as if summoned by something far stronger. Wyan swallowed hard. "The curse isn't gone. You've only become its new vessel, and that means our time is running out." The night grew heavier, more oppressive. Strange voices filled the forest again, the whispers of women, the cries of infants, even laughter resembling that of children. All blended into a hellish chorus that made the air vibrate. Jonathan screamed, clutching his ears, but the voices weren't coming from outside, they were inside him. Each whisper pierced into his mind, making him want to tear his own skull apart. Suddenly, the fragment of bone slipped from his grasp, floating gently into the air. From the small shard, the faint image of the child's face began to reappear, its eyes burning with hatred. "You thought you could destroy me?" the voice echoed. You only gave me a new throne, and it's you." Jonathan collapsed to his knees, sobbing, his body trembling violently. Wyan knew he had to make a terrible choice: save Jonathan, or end his life right there. Wyan drew the sacred kriss he carried, its blade glinting faintly under the moonlight. His hand trembled, not out of fear, but from the weight of the decision. Jonathan looked at him with tear-filled eyes. "Do it. End this, before it spreads." Wyan shook his head, tears falling. "No, John, you're not my enemy. You're just a victim." But as he hesitated, the child's face grew clearer within the floating shard of bone. The figure laughed coldly, its voice cutting through the night. "Hesitation, always sweet. The longer you wait, the stronger I become." Jonathan's body began to change. Black veins spread from his chest up to his neck, his face darkened, and his eyes glowed with a burning green light. The whispers inside him turned into the screams of thousands of souls. Wyan cried out, "Forgive me, John." He leapt forward, plunging the kriss into Jonathan's chest. Jonathan screamed. Black blood sprang from the wound. But instead of weakening, he grew stronger. From the wound, the shard of the skull was absorbed fully into his body, merging with him completely. The child fused with Jonathan. His body stretched, his face twisted into something monstrous, half human, half skull, with glowing green eyes and a mouth torn wide, filled with fangs. Jonathan was gone. Standing before Wyan was something new, the embodiment of the curse itself. Wyan staggered back, dropping his kriss. He realized he had failed. The figure stood tall at the edge of the lake, its face no longer Jonathan's, but a being born from the fusion of a human soul and the ancient curse of Trunyan. The wind swirled violently around it, the mist growing thicker. Wyan fell to his knees, surrendering. "Oh, divine ones, forgive me, I could not stop it." The creature gazed at Wyan with blazing green eyes. Its voice carried two tones at once, Jonathan and the child speaking together. "We are eternal. Through flesh and bone, through blood and fear, we shall never die." With a single stride, the creature stepped toward the lake. The water's surface parted, opening a path. From beneath the lake came voices, thousands of whispers from souls bound for centuries. Before disappearing into the lake's mist, the creature turned one last time, fixing its burning gaze on Wyan. "Tell them, the curse has a new name." Then it sank, swallowed by the green light that consumed all of Trunyan. Morning came with an eerie silence. The village of Trunyan looked the same. The Truman tree still stood, the lake still cloaked in mist. But one thing was different. Among the rows of skulls now sat a new one, pitch black, cracked with glowing green lines. It is said that travelers who visit Trunyan sometimes hear whispers from that skull, a voice speaking in a foreign tongue begging for help, or perhaps for a new body. And from that day on, the tale of the foreign tourist who took a skull in Trunyan was no longer just a story. It was the beginning of a new curse, one still waiting for its next victim.